Weather news now. The Weather Bureau Pagasa says the northeast monsoon will affect eastern Luzon and eastern Visayas. Due to that, light rains will prevail over the Cagayan Valley and the provinces of Aurora and Quezon. Meanwhile, clouds will bring isolated rains over the rest of the country, particularly over the Bicol region, eastern Visayas, and the regions of Caraga and Davao. We've got a look now at the rest of temperatures here and around the region. The crane ship Smith Borneo's difficulty in anchoring on the seabed has caused the alteration of the salvage plan for the U.S. ship that ran aground the Tubataha Reef. Here's Paula Palma with the details.
The U.S. Navy has revised the plan to remove the USS Guardian from the Tubataha Reef. In the new plan, an 800-ton crane ship, the Jascon 25, will do the heavy lifting in dismantling USS Guardian. Originally, Smith Borneo was tasked to lead the operations on February 9. Due to anchoring difficulties, the operations were temporarily halted until the arrival of the Jascon 25. The Coast Guard says it is important to remove the USS Guardian immediately to stop damage to the reef. But the instability of Smith Borneo may worsen the damage as torrents of waves may cause the vessel to hit the reef as well.
Pag-drop ng dalawang anchor, may cable naman yan eh. Ito sa Borneo, cable ang ginamit niya, hindi chain. Diba? Pagkatapos, po-forward yung barko hanggang malapit, naka-hold yung anchor. Kaya kahit itulak siya ng wave papunta ron sa naka-hold siya. O ngayon, since hindi nga nag-bite yung isa, they are worried na pag tinulak, baka kasi nga hindi naka-bite yung dalawa. Tumama dun sa reef.
The Jascon 25 left Singapore over the weekend. It is expected to arrive on February 15 to 16 at the Tubataha Reef to commence operations. Unlike the Smith Borneo, the Jascon 25 does not have to anchor due to its dynamic positioning system. Both the Smith Borneo and the Jascon 25 were requested at the same time, although negotiations for the Jascon 25 took longer as it was more expensive. Once the Jascon 25 arrives, it will immediately start dismantling the USS Guardian, while the Smith Borneo will simultaneously conduct small boat operations. Other vessels that will assist in the salvaging operations include the Trabajador, a tug-towing barge, the Intrepid, a handling barge, the Archon Tide, a tug-towing barge for anchor handling, the barge 7000, which will collect hull segments, and the U.S. Navy salvage TARS, a support vessel. The Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Corredor and the Philippine Navy ship BRP Esmael Lumibao will monitor and assist operations. The USS Guardian has so far inflicted about 4,000 square meters of damage to the reef. Damage to the reef will be determined once a U.S. Navy vessel has been removed. Isorena says extraction operations will most probably add another 20 to 30% of damage to the reef once completed. Although he says dividing the vessel into segments will help minimize the negative effect on the reef. Aside from the monetary compensation, Isorena says the U.S. government will also provide long-term assistance to the Tubataha board, including the donation of equipment to help maintain the reef. The extraction of the USS Guardian is scheduled to be completed by March 23, barring inclement weather. Paula Palma, Solar News.
An environmental activist has asked the Philippine government to take a second look at the fines for the destruction of local coral reefs. She says these fines should be based on the reef's economic value and should therefore be raised. Patricia De Leon has this story.
An environmental economist says the government should raise fines for the destruction of local coral reefs. On January 27, the estimated damage to the Tubataha Reef is 1,000 square meters. The damage quadrupled on February 6 to 4,000 square meters. Rina Rosales says the government should base its fine on the economic value of the reefs.
In 2006, we made recommendations on there should be automatic increases because we're talking about prices here. We're talking about monetary values. And so they should be based on the actual value of money. And so that they should be based on inflation rates, on interest rates, and they're not indexed.
The government will collect fines of 12,000 pesos for damage costs and another 12,000 pesos for restoration costs. Rosales adds that the fines are low as compared to other countries. Australia has a fine of 733 Australian dollars or 27,854 pesos per square meter of damage to the Great Barrier Reef. The state of Florida in the United States fines violations with 7,490 US dollars or 374,502 pesos per square meter of damage to the 502 square meter Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. Rosales says this is why the government must revise fines for the destruction of local reefs.
At the minimum, we should inflate those figures of 12,000. So you work backwards. You look at 2006 and then you look at the interest rates or the inflation rates that have happened since then, and then you inflate that 12,000 figure. We need to work on policy and work with the judicial system, work with lawyers and Congress, and see how we can improve this environment of imposing fines for violators.
Patricia De Leon, Solar News.
The latest Pulse Asia survey reveals lower approval and trust ratings for the country's top officials. The survey shows the approval rating for President Aquino going down from 78% in November of 2012 to 66% in January of 2013, while his trust ratings went from 80% in November 2012 down to 68% in January of 2013. Approval and trust ratings for Vice President Jejomar Binay, Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, House Speaker Feliciano Belmonte Jr., and Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno also dipped. Meanwhile, trust ratings for the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the Supreme Court also went down. The Pulse Asia survey was conducted from January 19th to the 30th. Malacanang says President Aquino's lower approval rating in the latest Pulse Asia survey is due to the negative events that occurred when the survey was conducted. Presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda says the ratings may have been influenced by recurring clashes in the Senate, the investigation on the Atimonan shooting incident, and the reported increase in criminal cases at the time the survey was conducted. Malacanang says the administration party was not referring to Vice President Jejomar Binay's skin complexion when Liberal Party Acting President June Abaya said that choosing between Team Pinoy and the United Nationalist Alliance was similar to choosing between black and white. Lacerda says the administration party hopes that Binay will not take the phrase as a derogatory allusion against him. The presidential spokesperson adds that the term black and white is a common phrase used to highlight the difference between two opposing advocacies. Lacerda says Team Pinoy never intended or never meant to insult the vice president and adds that no such move would be made throughout Team Pinoy's campaign. Former Movie and Television Review and Classification Board Chair Grace Poe Lemanzares visits the tomb of her late father Fernando Poe Jr. before attending her campaign sorties. Lemanzares, a common candidate of the Liberal Party and the United Nationalist Alliance, says she sees nothing wrong if there would be times that she would campaign with friends from other parties. She denies reports that her late father's best friend, former President Joseph Estrada, is angry at her for not being able to join UNA's Grand Proclamation Rally today in Cebu. Lemanzares attended LP's proclamation rally instead at Plaza Miranda. Malacanang says candidates should not give in to any extortion activities of the New People's Army. Presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda says the rebel group should not be making any demands on candidates who may want to campaign in areas considered as insurgency hotbeds. Lacerda says the palace is already working with the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police to ensure that candidates are able to campaign freely.